Let's see. Taking a while.
Hangouts can chop memory. It's not even.
Right. Yeah, sorry for that. Okay, welcome everybody to Dev Exchange. Today I have with me Rasheeda. Rasheeda and I go way back, and I'm so happy that today she's decided to join us on the Hangout as a guest. So, as you know, we're going to learn stuff that probably Rasheeda hasn't shared before, and I'm so excited about it because Rasheeda and I started way back at Kane University. Well, I knew her. We didn't really start together, but
Yeah.
we've been known each other for that long. And so, Rasheeda, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So to kick off things, I'd like you to tell us about yourself, who you are, where you've been, you know.
Okay. So my full name is Rasheeda Mandela Yehuza, and I obviously Ghanaian because my middle name Mandela means I've accepted and I'm ready to move on in Dabani. I grew up in Tamale, that's the capital of the northern region in Ghana. School there, primary, junior high school, went to a Halpern School Complex. And then I moved to Accra to study at St. Mary's Girls. So that's Mary's at Coligona in Accra.
Yes.
Yeah, that was an experience. I studied computer science at St. Mary's High School. And then from St. Mary's, I moved to King University. But that's a whole story, we'll dive into based on the course I decided to pick up, which is computer. Yeah.
So will you say that for you, you've always, or you started off from the more formal background where like your education involved computer science. I mean, as early as senior high, you were doing computer science related stuff, and that actually influenced you to take up um, computer science at the university.
So that's it's an interesting story because so growing up, I think I'm sure you can also relate. If you get good grades in school, people expect you to become a doctor, right? Or
Yeah, I can definitely relate.
professions in Ghana, basically.
Yeah.
I want to become a doctor. The family wants you to become a doctor or a lawyer. So growing up, I always had it at the back of my mind that I wanted to become a doctor because, I mean, that was the default for whenever someone asked me what I wanted to do in the future. And the path to becoming a doctor meant I had to study science in high school. But since I was a kid, I was always very interested in like electricals, like tinkering with things. In Tamale, like we used to build toy cans, like toy cars out of tin cans and like little things. So you put together sort of like an electrical system to get the car to move on its own. And I used to do that with a couple of boys in the neighborhood. And I think at that stage, I knew I wanted to do something related to electrical stuff, but I didn't really know what that was. But I didn't really know it had to even do with it was connected to a profession like anything called electrical engineering. Um, so I just went with the whole narrative of you get good grades and everybody wants you to become a medical doctor. You should, take that route. And so when I got to high school, even before high school, after after junior high school, I asked that I wanted to get enrolled in because at that time I think NIIT just came up, and my idea of computers, like if someone wanted a career in computer, my whole idea was you would be fixing computers, installing software, using Mavis Beacon teacher stipend, and also Microsoft Word. I didn't know anything other than that. So that was my whole idea of having a career in computers. And I learned that you could build a website. And I remember so well telling my friend that I want to be able to build like a website because it was my first time using Yahoo. You know, at first you go to the internet cafes, you open a web page, and the first page that comes up, you open the browser, the first page that comes up is Yahoo, right? So at the back of my mind, I knew I always wanted to build like a site called Yahoo because in my mind, it was the only website that existed in the world. And that, I guess that interest evolved over time because I became interested in just understanding how Microsoft Word itself was built. And I'd never heard of the word software engineering, coding, or programming. And that was in high school. And I remember I kept asking the teachers, like computer teachers at school, like, how is this made? Like, how is Microsoft Office made? Because that's what they teach you. They teach you how to use Microsoft Office, or like maybe Beacon teaches typing, and nobody could give me like a definite answer. So I remember one of my friends told me I should study computer science, like out of the blue. She just said, "Oh, you should study computer science when you go to the university." And that was the first time I actually heard that there was a course in the university called computer science. So I went home. When I got home from high school, in Ghana, after high school, you have a gap year, you know, to work or do whatever you want to do with your life. And I wanted to just understand what the whole concept of computer science was. So I signed up for a computer science. I signed up to a computer science school in Tamale. And it turns out they were also teaching Mavis Beacon teaches typing and Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. So I thought, okay, I didn't get what I wanted, so maybe I should just apply to KNUST to study computer science. And everybody in my family thought I was going to apply to, I was going to apply for medicine or for like nursing. And I just chose computer science, first choice, computer science, second choice. And physics was something third choice, and I got computer science. I didn't tell anyone, and after a while, we're like, "Ah, what did you get?" I was like, "I didn't get medicine. I didn't even apply." I was like, "I didn't get medicine. I got computer science." We're like, "What is computer science? What are you going to do? What is computer science?" I was like, "I don't know, but I like computers, and that's what I got." And so I went to KNUST to study computer science. So I guess my whole like the whole like the interest in computer science wasn't I wasn't necessarily interested in computer science. I was interested in just tinkering, and I was just interested in like things like electrical stuff that turned to become an interest in the computer science direction, I guess.
Good stuff. I mean, I think for you, you were set up really early to get into computer science. I think you have a very interesting story over there. So, how long have you been programming?
So that's an interesting question. So when I got to university, the first semester, it was the first time, we all heard of software engineering. And I don't know if you remember Dr. Aqua. Did you ever work with Dr. Aqua? He's now the HOD at KNUST.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah. So the first programming class I took was C++. Everybody took C++. And the whole time I was like, what the hell is this? Like, what is going on? And I think at that time I didn't understand the concept, like what coding was or what programming was. And so it took a while. So my first semester in the university, I don't think I did any coding because I didn't know what it was. And my second year, I think we took Visual Basic class, and it was interesting to me how you could create a program by dragging and dropping. Like you just drag a button, you double click the button, and then you write a function behind that button. And I think that really opened my eyes to what programming could be, or like what programming was in a way. I mean, not Visual Basic, but just the idea that you can program an action behind a button. And so I got more interested. And at that time, I met Edward Pye. I know you're familiar, like, Edward Pye. And I also met
Yeah.
Seth. They were my seniors. and we had a C++ coding homework. So I went to them because they offered to help we the freshmen if we needed any support. So I went to them and I asked if they could explain what the question was. And I saw that Edward Pye was running, like he run a program from his terminal. And I was like, you know how to program? Like the idea of someone programming was mind blowing for me. And I was like, well, you know how to program? And he said, yes. And you would also know how to program if you just keep learning. So they provided a lot of resources and a lot of guidance. And yeah, so I would say in terms of programming, how long I've been programming, would say probably from my second year in university up until now. But actually writing good code, I'll say in the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years, because it's a whole evolution.
Yeah. There isn't a time where you see that I have gotten to the point where I write good code. Because you write code today, a year later or 6 months down the line, you realize that I could have done things better. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
So
even now, I sometimes you write code today, you go back tomorrow, and you're like, this doesn't look okay, and
yeah,
always it's an evolution. So
cool. So in your okay, tell me. Let's do it this way. Tell me about how your journey has been. So after school, when you were done with the project and you now we're now in the real world, how has the journey been for you?
okay, so you mean like my work experiences, um,
Yeah.
the challenges, no, or just okay?
I mean, we can talk about your work experiences, how your experience has been from you started from which point to what point. So now currently you're working at the company. I don't want to say it. Yeah. So you can kind of give me your work history. So where you started working from, then where you are now.
Okay, okay, sure. Um, so whilst I was at KNUST, I think in my second or third year, uh, Tech Hub came along. And I know you're very familiar with Tech Hub because so many things happen. I think Tech Hub, like the whole M Friday and Tech Hub initiative, really shaped my mindset towards what I wanted my future to look like or what I wanted my career or profession to look like. And at that time, I wasn't really thinking about entrepreneurship or like even owning a company or a product. And so I got to a stage where like I understood what technology could do for Ghana, and I knew that we could solve a lot of problems, or realize that we could solve a lot of problems on campus with technology. So I guess my first work experience or unofficial work experience was building, like working on a project called Click Trade Ghana. Do you remember Click Trade Ghana?
Yeah, I remember ClickTrade.
Yeah.
It was well competitive, right?
Yeah, we're trying to compete against Google. What was the product from Google?
Google Trader.
Yeah, Google Trader. Yeah. I look at the code now and it was spaghetti code like all over the place. I didn't even know how to organize my functions or includes, like it was crazy back then. But I guess that was my first experience like working on a project or working on an unofficial project that helped me grow. So after Click Trade Ghana, for my final year project in at KNUST, I built an SMS communication platform. So for easy dissemination of messages on campus and for organizations as well. And that is actually still running today because you realize that even though a lot of people have smartphones, there are still many people who don't, have smartphones. And one of the best ways to reach out to them or communicate effectively is via SMS notifications. Uh, so I think with Nasara Mobile, which is what it's called now, it I would say it was probably my first like experience working on a project that people used, like online, and people paid for. Um, so those are the unofficial stuff. But after school, I did my national service with Mobile. They're now called Viamo. And you and I have some history at Voto, because you were the first employee at Voto, right? You and Mark met. It's a long story. It's an extremely long story, but a very successful one now for Viamo, because they're doing great things and like creating a lot of impact. Um, so I started working with Voto in Kumasi. I started by doing my national service. It wasn't really national service, because I felt like we were contributing more. We had more responsibilities than like the expectations of a national service personnel. So it was a full-time job. And after national service in 2013, no, in 2014, I signed on full-time, and I worked at Voto till the end of 2015. It was time for me to move on and try new things. And my goal was to, I was kind of interested in agriculture at that time, because if you remember, there was so much talk in the media about the need for us to grow our own food, and the need for us to promote technology in the agricultural sector. And I wanted to do something in agriculture or health, because those were very interesting fields for me. And then an opportunity through the Mandela Fellowship, which we could probably talk about later, came up in Abuja, Nigeria, for me to go work with Hello Tractor. And I joined Hello Tractor as they didn't have a tech team. So I basically shaped the architecture and like the platform for Hello Tractor. So like representing like the tech team for Hello Tractor, which was an amazing experience, but also a very interesting experience. So of course, extremely challenging, very, very challenging, but also an eye opener. And after Hello Tractor, I at that point I knew I wanted to build my skills, because I was sort of like a big fish in a very small pond, and I wasn't growing, like in terms of the skills and profession. It wasn't getting to a point where I felt like I was learning something new every day. So I wanted to challenge myself outside of my comfort zone, which was Africa, and I wanted to work with people from other countries and work with new technologies and ideas that I've never even thought of. And so I applied to a couple of companies, and I now work at Wayfair in Berlin, Germany. And so far, it's been an amazing experience. I've been totally challenged. I mainly use PHP. We mainly use PHP on my team. And my understanding of PHP then is completely different. It's now completely different, because like you see the code that they write in PHP and you don't even believe it's like the language. Because you use Laravel. Laravel is great, but we built like our own framework that's like extremely secured, and does so many like really awesome and modern things in object-oriented programming. So yeah, I think at this stage I'm like being like really challenged, and I'm experiencing new things and new ways of relating to people, and also just learning about new technologies and how big companies operate.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm curious about Wayfair, but I'm gonna put it on hold a bit for now. Because
Okay.
what I was going to talk about the fact that you did somewhere, you did your MSc, and so I want you to share a bit of experience on that.
My master's. Uh, so that is still ongoing in a way. uh, I started a Master of Philosophy at KNUST, and I I didn't complete uh, for a couple of reasons. Uh, One was because of my research topic, which wasn't readily accepted by my supervisors, and I there wasn't enough resources at Kane UST to support the research that I wanted to do, because I was very interested in artificial intelligence and like just deep learning and language. Because at that time I was working at Votomobile, and that's Viamo now. And you know what we do, like or what they do. I'm no longer with them, but they do a lot of language. It's like how do you say, like you receive a call and you hear it in your own language. Yeah, but all those things were not automated in a way. Like, so I wanted to understand what language processing was, and I thought doing a master's would enable me to learn these things, but I was very wrong. And I yeah, I knew, like, yeah, there weren't enough resources to support, like the area that I wanted to research in. So I left after a year. Maybe I'll go back and continue one day. I don't know, but uh, or maybe I go somewhere else. To,
Yeah. I mean, I think the project topic is really interesting. Should definitely go back to school.
yes.
One thing too that I like to find out is what has been your most challenging experience in your career?
What has been the most challenging thing in my career? Hmm. So I think now that I'm here at Wayfair, you notice that one of the things that sets people in the West and people like just in the West or developed world is resources, you know, and the pace at which we can grow based on the resources that we have available to us, or our environment creates for us. And those resources go beyond just like physical things. It's also an extreme mental situation. And I think in Ghana, internet is a challenge. I don't know, maybe things are better now, but back then, internet was a huge challenge for us. So, like, imagine you're working and you need to Google something, but you don't have access to internet. Like, you can't even go on Stack Overflow, or you can't even go on Wikipedia to read something that would enable your workflow. So I think for me, starting out as a programmer, my main challenge was resources, like not having a proper Mac, or not even a Mac. For Mac, you had to save for 2 or 3 years to even buy one. And the first Mac I bought is what I'm still using, because it's a very emotional thing. And everybody who owns their first Mac, when you buy your first Mac in Ghana cities, you appreciate that thing for life. So so I think, yeah, the main thing was resources, because I feel like it stifled my growth in general. Because I remember being extremely interested in Android development, but I didn't really have an Android phone, and I had a super slow computer, and the emulator wouldn't run. And I got interested in iOS development, couldn't afford a Mac, nobody had an iPhone. So it's like you don't grow as fast as you should, because there aren't enough resources around you. But at the same time, it's nice to be resourceful, which is why, like, you see a challenge, but then you take another route. That's why we have a lot of web developers, from Ghana, because that's like one of the easiest ways to actually practice the craft. And you have, more iOS developers in the US, because they have more resources around them to test their apps, and they have like a user base to grow their products. So that was one thing. I guess another was just extremely questioning if I was good enough. Like, I still question that every day. Like, are you good enough? Like, like that whole syndrome. What's the name? Imposter syndrome. Uh, yeah, always questioning if you're good enough, and people make you question if you're good enough. And I think for me, I'm not a huge, I'm not really into labels, but sometimes these labels really give people an opportunity to define you even before working with you, or even before getting to know you. And so sometimes your ideas can be marginalized because they classify you into they put you in a box or classify you based on the label that they see on you. So it was really a challenge, like especially working on Nasara mobile, Nasara Tech stuff. People just can't take you seriously if you're the one in front of them pitching an idea or pitching how you can build come up with a solution to their problem. And so yeah, those are some of the challenges that I faced just starting out.
Oh, and what are some of the highlights of your career? Like, what times were you so up there? You felt like, okay, you're
up,
hitting.
up there, I guess I'm not one to blow my own horn, but I don't know what up there means.
I mean, we all define our own success. I mean, what
Yeah.
success means to me, it might not necessarily be what success means to you. Yeah, so I guess what I want to know is, in the course of your career, there's been times that you felt like, okay, you've been successful at something. Yeah, and that made you feel good about yourself. And with the probability to all those things that I want to know.
Yeah. Um, I guess one thing that so I got selected for the Mandela Washington Fellowship, and I think for me it's more than just the idea of the idea of success to me um, is basically growth and like happiness, like to have optimal experience based on like the vision that you set for yourself or the goals that you set for yourself. And the Mandela Fellowship was one of those, mainly because I got to study business and entrepreneurship in university in the US, for a short period. But I had always wondered how, or always, like try to imagine what a combination of computer science and business and entrepreneurship could do for me or for my career. And I got the opportunity and networked with a lot of people who are still part of my life today, and they help shape you in every way, in every possible way. And the experiences you get, like the experience I got from that fellowship, like still stays with me. So it's like, to me, it's like it's successful because it enabled me to get optimal experience in some way, you know. um and I guess also just my first job out of university working with Voter was also great, like great people, and building applications that I thought I didn't even think I had the capacity to build, or like my mind could even like wrap its head around these solutions. And so I would say, yeah, like some of the projects I worked on at Voter were very like important to me, like, and they were important in making me realize that I could actually do more than I think I can. um, and one other thing is Nasara Tech. Nasara Tech is still going on today. Um, and just having a product that thousands of people use, and I don't have to do much, and they use it for their businesses, for their organizations, and they get a lot of value from a product that just sits there in the cloud, and they pay for it. So I think that really, I'm quite proud of that piece of work, even if it's not cutting edge technology. It's a it's a great project that's still ongoing. Um, yeah. What was the question again?
No, I think you've answered the question. Yeah, I mean,
I was wondering because I started talking about projects and I wasn't sure if it was related.
it's all part of success stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious about how the process for uh, getting accepted into the Mandela Washington Fellowship, program was like. Can you run us through
Yes.
how one prepares him or herself for something like that?
Sure. Sure. So I'm just going to give you a background of why I applied for it and why I thought I should get it, just so you can have an idea of like the things I was working on in my community, and like maybe that can shape your. So um, as one of the, we don't have a lot of females in technology. I think that's a known fact, and especially in Ghana. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to organize more women to not only learn about technology but to stay in like the field after university, or after their tertiary education. And so I teamed up with Regina Ajari, and we started Tech Needs Girls. And that was back in 2013 at KNUST, Tech Hub. Once again, Tech Hub, one of the crucial aspects of my life. So we started Tech Needs Girls at KUST. And based on the results of like the Tech Needs Girls workshop, I realized that you could actually create a lot of impact if you put resources into creating opportunities for people to learn about possibilities for their future, and to learn about what options they have other than the narrative that your environment offers you. And so I got more involved in like social enterprise things, like anything that would enable someone uh, do better, like get like anything that would create impact in a way. And based on that profile I had created, it was easier for me to apply for the, well, not easier, it made sense for me to apply to the Mandela Fellowship, because I also wanted to learn about business and development, and I wanted to build a network that would enable me to keep doing the things I was doing in Ghana, that's in the social enterprise sector. And it seemed the Mandela Fellowship was the right like opportunity. And so I applied. And for the application process, I got a few friends and my manager at Voto at that time to review my application. And for whoever is applying, I think that's very important, because sometimes when you're writing an essay or filling out an application form, you can just get so caught up in your own head about what you think is okay to put on paper without really articulating yourself properly, and especially if you are humble. So it's nice to have other people check your application. And so I would say having people, like the people around me, those who knew me, uh, look through my application really helped in a way. And also, um, yeah, I guess also knowing exactly what you want out of the program. Like, you need to know that, if because spending time, I mean, going to the US is it's a good experience. Traveling in general is a good experience, not because it's the US, but but because you get to travel. It's a good experience. And so yeah, that's good, but you really need to make sure that you understand what you want out of the Mandela Fellowship, because there's so many opportunities. Like, it's going to open so many opportunities, so many doors for you, and you need to know how to use them. You need to know how to go into enter those doors, basically. And at the same time, you need to realize that, because for the fellowship, it's not really about you, but it's about empowering you to do for your community, or to do for your business, whatever reason that you're applying. So you need to understand that, and you need to articulate that in your applications, basically. Um, yeah, but in general, it was a great experience. And for anyone thinking about applying, I would say go for it. And I think we also have the RLC in Accra. So even if you're not a fellow, you can be part of the RLC. I've forgotten the full like the full name, but I think it's like a community. You do an online course. They have activities. I think they even have retreats or so. and it's really nice. Like it's a really nice way to, because you find yourself as well during the fellowship.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I want us to go back to Wayfair. How was the whole process like? I mean, finding the job, applying, you know, applying for visa, relocating, all of those things. How was it like?
Okay. It's still very fresh because it's been a little bit over 6 months.
Uh,
So I think I got to a point where I think I mentioned it before that I wanted that experience outside of Africa, and I wanted to work with people from different backgrounds, and especially work in a big company. I think that was one of the goals, to work in a big company and see how things were done and how to relate with people more, and work on like different architecture. So before I talk about just Wayfair, I need to mention that there were a lot of failures that led up to Wayfair. Because you're applying to jobs, and I was thinking about all. I didn't limit my search. I was searching everywhere, like Africa, Asia, North America, Europe, but at that point I realized when you just send in an application because you think this company is like a, like it has a big name, or it's nice, you most likely wouldn't understand why you want to work at that company. So after a number of applications and interviews that didn't work out, I decided to really take a break and take a step back and think about what I really wanted to get out of like moving. Because if you're moving continents, or you're moving to a big company, you need to really understand why you want to do that. And so a friend who had recently moved to Germany told me about, and I had never applied to a company in Germany before. So I started looking at some companies in Germany, and there were a lot of startups and a lot of like just a lot of jobs and opportunities in Berlin and in Hamburg, in Munich and in Frankfurt. There were so many, and I thought, no, that's not what I want to do. Like I don't want to just apply for a job because it's a job and you probably want to move to a different continent. So I took my time, searched, and narrowed it down to two companies, because I knew that for those companies, if I got accepted, I would want to grow there. I was really interested in their technology stack. I was interested in their global reach. I was interested in the business opportunity for those countries expanding to Europe. And so it was Wayfair and some other company. I won't mention that company because I'm not there. But the application process was extremely different than applications in than was different from interviewing in the US and Canada. Because in Germany, they try to give you the personal touch. Like they try to get to know you as opposed to sending you a Codility or HackerRank uh, test, without really knowing who is behind the computer. So they get to know you, you have a conversation, and you figure out if you want to work for that company or not, so you're both aligned. So Wayfair was very interesting. A recruiter called me. We had a conversation, and um, they scheduled a technical interview. So with the technical interview, you don't know who is organizing the interview. You don't see them. Maybe they could, but I don't know. There was no video or anything. And I did like 3 live tests. So they give you a question on the spot, and you live code the solution. So you talk through your solution, and there was a SQL, and there was also like 2 other like quite tricky programs. But I think once you're relaxed, you will be able to do it. And then afterwards, there was like a 4 hour, half a day interview as well, with 3 different teams. And I did all of that remotely. Um, so with 3 different teams, and it was quite intense. I will not lie. A very intense interview. I won't go into details because they still need to interview people, so I don't think it'll be right for me to basically explain the format. And in Germany, for the other company, they give you a take home exercise. So you basically build an application, and for those two companies, um, I got an offer, but I got offers from both companies. But at that time, Berlin seemed to be an interesting place for me as my next move, and it just made sense for me to go to Wayfair and to also like move to Berlin. And I was also interested in learning a new language and culture. Yeah.
So how's the German coming? Are you getting there?
Uh, mein Deutsch nicht ist gut. Not at all. I said
Okay.
my German is not good. No, it's not. Um, but in terms of moving here, because I think that was part of the question you asked, um, I think the German government is very tactical about immigration, and and so if you have a job and you have a university degree, I think it's less cumbersome than some other countries that we will not mention. So it's less cumbersome, and it was. I think the visa is the least of your worries when when moving to Germany. The bureaucracy is what you should be worried about, the language barrier, and of course that comes with moving to any new country. But holy smokes, the German bureaucracy is real. And I think for the I think I'm still settling in. Like even though I've been here for over 6 months, it's still quite a challenge, mainly because of the language barrier. If you're trying to integrate a little bit, um, yeah. But it's it was smooth, I will say. By the weather.
Awesome. So can you talk to me about how your entrepreneurship journey has been? I know you've done a couple of stuff with Nasara Tech and all of that. Can you tell me about some of the challenges that you encountered, some of the success that you had in your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, I will talk to you. Uh,
Talk
uh,
to me
talk to me.
about that challenge.
Talk to me. No. So um, so I think there's this whole sexy nature or sexy this sexiness that comes with entrepreneurship, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, like be a CEO or founder of a company. And I think at one point I was sucked into that whole train of of yeah, you're like you own your company, like you're founder of your company. It was it was some magic going on in Ghana at that time, and you become the CEO of 0%. You own it. He's like you own 100% of your company, and like it produces 0% revenue. So I think at that time I was trying my hands on a few things, and one of the things that stuck was Nasara Mobile, um, mainly because Nasara Mobile solves a real problem. Like it's not a groundbreaking technology, but people still want to send SMS. People want to make people want a better way to organize their customers. People want a better way to notify their customers. So using SMS as that technology, how do you build like a service around it to make it easier for people to have applications, but the end goal is to send notifications. So Nasara Mobile is still running today, and it has given me like there's been so much growth with that, because along the way you realize maybe you don't really want to run a business right now. And I think that's what I realized along the way. I wasn't really interested in running a business or like building a company at that time. I wanted to manage a product. I wanted to build a product, and that was what made me happy. That was what gave me optimal experience. And so that's what I stuck. I stuck. Do you say I stuck to? I stuck with it with Nasara Mobile, and it also gave me an opportunity to try new technologies. So if I wanted to try the latest version of Docker, I could. I could use it with Nasara Mobile. If I wanted to use Vagrant, I could try it out in my development with Nasara Mobile. If I wanted to try a new API, I could try it with Nasara Mobile. So it became, or it is still like a platform where, like I can innovate in a way. I can innovate on a platform by learning new things and then implementing it. And you actually have users, like people using the product, right? So I mean, I would say Nasara Tech was an interesting journey, but along the way, you just have to take a step back and realize, like, do you really want to build a company, or you just want to build and manage a product that runs? And I think that's where I'm at right now. The goal is definitely to do something in the future, but you need to actually create create some kind of value with whichever company that you're building. It doesn't make sense to be a CEO or of a company that doesn't really create value for its like for users, or you don't really understand the market and what the market needs. Then, because like sometimes there are products that are not necessary, but we keep going because of that whole idea of I want to be an entrepreneur. But that's not really the case. I don't know, but I guess from my perspective, being an entrepreneur is great, but you just have to take a step back and really analyze what that word entrepreneurship is. And I think I'm at that stage right now, where growth and skills, building my skill set is very important to me, and then I can go back and deal with it maybe 5, 7 years from now.
Okay. So now that you've made it known that Nasara Tech and the application that you've been working on is more also an opportunity for you to play with technologies. How many programming languages have you written in Nasara? Like Nasara?
Um, So we mainly use Laravel. We mainly use PHP, Laravel, and we have some Python scripts as well to automate some of the things that we do. We use different like technologies like Jenkins for job management. Um, we use a bunch of different APIs and packages that enable us to automate our workflow, make it easier for us not to reinvent the wheel. And for me personally, I also do Android development. Um, I haven't done it in a while, like in the last 6 months, but Android using Java and just XML native stuff. I also did Node.js in the past. That was up until January 2018 because of the work I was doing in Abuja, using Kimbay as a backend, Kimbay as a backend service as well. Also dived into Firebase, a little bit of Firebase um, on Nasara mobile stuff as well. Um, just SQL. Uh, and my skill set in SQL is actually getting better because of my work at Wayfair, because they take SQL quite seriously. So I'm writing code that I didn't really, you know, think I
So
would write in.
would you say that now you are abandoning ORMs to write this raw SQL code?
Yeah, raw SQL code, raw SQL code, raw triggers and functions and all those things.
Oh, is it safe to say that of all the programming languages that you have used, PHP is your favorite?
Yes. So I wouldn't say favorite. I would say I am comfortable in PHP. But that's the thing. I don't worship one language, right? I just happen to work with PHP a lot in the jobs that I've done. And when I picked up Python, I needed it for the job that I was doing. So I picked it up. When I started working on building Android apps, I picked it up for the job that I needed to do. And, it was going great. when I picked up Node.js, it was because of the job that I was doing. So I guess it's just using the right language for the best tool that you're building. I started picking up Go because there's a really interesting Go what's the word community here in Berlin. So they have like regular meetups, and a lot of companies are adopting Go as well. So it's nice to just dive into it, go to some of these meetups, and see if it's a language that you want to, like pick up. Yeah, and also JavaScript, because but JavaScript is, I'm not into the whole JavaScript frameworks like Angular, but also at work I use React.js. I picked up React.js quite recently, and I've been working with that and implementing a little bit on Nasara Tech as well. Yeah.
Right. So you would say that JavaScript and PHP are popular in the German startup scene.
PHP for sure. PHP is like is the most popular. It's just like Nigeria, right? Nigeria and Ghana as well. It's PHP, and so I think you would, if you're a startup, and if you're a startup, or just a company looking for developers in maybe Berlin or Nigeria or Ghana, and your PHP is not part, then I mean it's like you're not really looking for people in that region. So it's very strategic, and it is one of the like cool languages around here. But Go is picking up really quickly. Python is also a thing. JavaScript as well. But I will say almost every company somehow, to an extent, uses PHP in Berlin, Germany.
Awesome. How is your development environment like? So now that you do a lot more PHP, what are some of the tools that you use? What are some of the packages that you use? And yeah, basically, how's your development environment like?
So PHP Storm. At first, I was using Sublime, just like Sublime, and use Sublime packages, and also VS Code. Uh, but I recently started using PHP Storm, and I don't think I could go back. It gives you so much control over everything. You can do so much in the terminal, and it makes debugging extremely easy. And you can also connect to SQL servers right there. You don't have
Yeah.
to do so much. You don't have to install like a bunch of different packages to get your workflow going in PHP Storm. So I mean, I think I mostly use PHP Storm now, but once in a while I swap between um, VS Code and Sublime, or even Atom. Even Atom, yeah, sometimes.
I mean, I have really a similar experience with PHP Storm. So when Visual Studio came out, and there was a whole lot of hype around Visual Studio. Let's use Visual Studio and write PHP code with that. But I quickly realized that it was just a painful process. Yeah. Because I could do so many things in PHP Storm that I couldn't do in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code or whatever, Visual Code Studio. I don't
Visual Studio Code.
know. Yeah. And I mean, because one of the, I think when, in my experience, I've had to work with existing code bases. And one of the unpopular things in the PHP world is inheriting legacy code bases. And when you go and take over a code base, you realize that there's all the kinds of bad decisions that you find in the world of programming. You find some in that PHP code base. And I PHP Storm has been very, very helpful in very weird ways. Yeah, because if I see a function definition and I'm curious about where that function is being used, if even if click through doesn't work, let's say it's a static function or method or anything like that, it doesn't click through doesn't work. Just doing finding path like that alone, that's so much more for me. That makes me so happy and makes my life so easy.
Yeah.
That in all honesty, I don't know what I would do without PHP Storm.
So you,
So
sorry, go on.
yeah, I agree with you on that point.
But which programming language do you use more often, given
So
Mandela?
currently I work with PHP a lot more.
Oh, okay. I didn't think
And
you still work with PHP because you know.
oh, I do. I'm working with a company that uses PHP, and by day I do PHP. By night I do Python. Yeah. So I do more of PHP, and on personal projects I do use Python. Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, it's really not anything like, again, I don't worship one particular language, or I'm not so devoted to to a programming language.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, because this conversation has turned into, a lot more PHP, or PHP has come out a lot more. I'm
Yeah.
getting a message from a friend, and he's actually asking me whether I do make my guests, swear loyalty to PHP.
No, I think
Because
I really don't think because you do have people who look down on languages, like, oh, people would say PHP is this and that, yet they've never really used PHP extensively to understand the power of the language, or some who say Java is this. I mean, yeah, every language has its flaws, but if we all focused on the flaws, then we most likely would never really pick up any language. But one framework that I can say I don't want to touch ever is Angular for some reason, Angular JS. I mean, it just depends on your experience, and people would always try to impose their reality on how they experience, on their reality of experience in a language onto, like other people. And I just think it doesn't matter. Like, it's not a big deal. If if you have to build a tool, figure out what works. Like, if you have to, write a simple command or a script, Python might be much better for you to run via the command line, or just use shell scripting or bash scripting. Like, just be more versed in, and be open. Like, be open to learning new languages for, like, so you can use it for the right job. And I think that's where I'm at. Like, I'm happy to learn new languages and learn new ways of new technologies, but I don't just commit to one and say
yeah,
it is this language, nothing else. No, it's not important.
I'm not that religious to programming languages.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking for a while now, and I'm just going to chip in and say, if you're watching and you have a question that you'd like me to ask Rasheeda, you're free to put it in on the live chat, and I'll go ahead and ask that question. So I think the next thing that I wanted us to do is to bless us with your knowledge. I keep on saying, like, to show us something. I mean, show us something that you're working on. It could be something you're working on. It could be some new trick that you've learned. You want to wow us, or you want to teach us something. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. It's up to you to. But really, generally, the core of Exchange is really to learn from fellow developers, and even things that we are still exploring is product managers, really, to give us insight into how they work, how productive they get, what tools get them productive, and uh, going that extra mile of learning how they put all of those things to use to make them more productive. Because it's very useful if you can learn useful tricks and ways that you can be more productive from fellow developers. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's what this segment is really going to be about. Just show us anything that you've learned or you've picked up in your experience that you think will be useful to other people. Yeah.
Okay. I think more recently I've been tinkering around shell scripting, bash scripting. I'm not the best at bash scripting or anything, but I've picked up a lot of interest because I find that sometimes you just need to write a very simple, like maybe API, or just something like a really simple script. And if you do it in maybe, let's say, PHP, or even like Python or something, you need to set up like a whole server so you can run it in um, in a, you could execute Python scripts via the terminals as well as PHP. But sometimes the things that you want to do, you have to set up like a whole server so you can navigate and do a bunch of things. So I've been trying to understand how I can use Bash to build or like automate certain aspects of my life. And I think what I'm going to show you is very simple and straightforward. I think all developers uh, basically, most people have this set up on their laptops. So I'll just show you. It's not going to be super long, but so what do I have to do now? Do I have to
share your screen
with you? Okay. How do you even do this? Okay, so I go here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I mean,
Can you see my screen?
it appears like it's duplicating itself. I think you have to like click on it in a different tab. Can you click on a different tab?
Okay, I'm on a different tab.
So that would work.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Okay. Oh, one thing you could do is install this plugin for Magoosh, and that's for Chrome. So every time you open a new tab, it will give you a new word, so you can learn something. You can learn a new English word, and they can even
Saturnine.
Yeah, so they can
okay.
Yeah, so it's not tech related, but I guess since it's
yeah. I mean, if you're obsessed with vocabulary, I mean, if you want to be like Papa Jasco.
Oh, not at all. Like I'm not going to be good in English or anything. It's not my language. So I think what I will show is, let's see this. Okay, so this is very like extremely straightforward. Like almost every developer maybe has this. So I guess one way you can supercharge your workflow in a way, like you don't want to go for your mouse all the time or type a bunch of things like if you wanted to do ls-la, oh, that's nice, but it would be nice to probably just do something like this, right? So I have like a bash profile. Let's see, just here. I have a bash profile with just shortcuts to things that I most frequently type in the command line. And I didn't really know how to open .bash in Atom because it's a hidden file. So if someone knows how to do it, let me know. So I just copied it over to this, so it's better to look at.
Are you to open Atom from your terminal?
Okay, so I go to open.
So now, are you able to open it from your terminal? Like, are you able to invoke, like with VS Code, you just type code, then it will just open the.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me.
Oh.
I have code. I don't think I set up the environment variables. I don't also have. Oh, looks like I have Atom. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, then you can just type the file name.
Okay, see, I'm learning from you. See, there you go. Thank you very much. Okay, so just extremely simple things like this, which is to so one thing as a developer, you keep typing a bunch of things, and then you want to pull up one of the commands from way back. So you could just, instead of type in history and then grep in the like the search word, you could just do HS and then the search word. So which is quite straightforward. I'm sure everybody already has that going. So if I maybe do something like this, then it shows me all of the like sudos that I've typed in the last couple of sessions. And then this is sort of like my favorite. Like if I need to cd into a directory, like to cd out of a directory, you just do I just type dot dot in the terminal, and then I cd out, just one step. And if I want to do 2 times, I could just do 2 dots or like 3 dots. And I think that's also, you could go all the way to 10 if you need it. But for me, it's so helpful because sometimes when I'm trying to cd out of a file, I can cd, like you do this and it's like 3 dots, and that's not very nice. So let's see, what do we have here? We have, what can I cd into? Something that's appropriate for people to see. Okay, so that's in my library. I could just do this and I've seeded out of my library. Yeah, so you see how this works. If I 2 dots, I'm still here because I'm not in subsequent folders. And if you use Git a lot, I think this would also really help. Like, so you just do GC and then you can check out too. So if I do GC, it will tell me I'm not in a Git repository because that makes sense. If you do GCM, also not in a Git repository, which would just Git checkout master, and then GCR would just Git checkout release for me. And then one thing that I use most often is SSH. So you could just like type SSH and then the path to your key. I didn't put the whole thing here because that wouldn't be very nice. I think another thing we do often is to use the command clear. So like you type clear, it's cleared, and you could also just do this and it clears your terminal for you. And then history, same as this, but not really. This just shows you your command history. And then we also have pinging, which is like, let's say you can just ping Google. And then that's it's like it echoes the request after certain packets are sent. Same with this, and also DF. If you work in a Linux environment, especially if you have a VPN, you always want to check that you have enough space. You could also write a script that checks when your space is up to a certain limit, and then it sends you an email. That's also possible. And then you have, so just extremely basic things. But one of the things that I've also been looking at is how to run certain like to make API calls, like how to process data using Bash or shell scripting. And one of the things that I learned quite recently, one of the projects is like creating a QR code via like generating QR codes from the terminal, right? So so let's see. I'm in that folder. So let's see this one that I. Sorry. .sh, and then it generates the QR code for you right from the terminal. So if that's something that I don't know if that doesn't improve your workflow, but it was just a simple project that I wanted to work on to kind of get really into the whole shell scripting thing. So if you actually pull out your QR code right now, this would just say hello, nothing major. So I can just show you the code real quick. And I think a lot of these things, like example of this is, like readily available online for like shell scripting in general, because most of the time, if you want to make a DB connection, sorry, not a DB connection, an internet connection, I think it's important for you to check these things because, we're making API calls. So I guess the first thing here is just to get, available HTTP connection methods. And, some people use curl, there's HTTP, there's wget, there's fetch. I added all this, but like fetch, wget, HTTP isn't actually used. I just use curl. But I could iterate that in future versions. Okay, so this is just, so we just run an if command and set the like available HTTP clients. Okay, then this is where we want to like, so here we check the clients that are available and return like one of them for our HTTP calls. And I just commented this out so it makes it easier for me to explain. And so we will use this to execute the API calls. So this is a switch statement in Bash scripting, just in case, like someone is new. And it's so weird, like you write case and then you close it. So it's just like how you probably write in PHP, like switch and then case I. Yeah, so that's very similar. So this is kind of like the case, which was quite interesting for me at first, because you do something like this. Let's just do case. You do something like it's auto-filling it for me in Bash. But let's say for those who know PHP, like you do something like HU, and then you write your logic, and then you go to the next case. It's really similar to this. So this is, yeah. So it's very similar to that. And same with Python and Java, however that is. So for case curl, we want to set the command to that, and for case http and wget and stuff like that. And all this are like reusable code from like other things that you can find. So how do we actually create the QR code? We mainly use this and also this, I guess. But there is a very simple, like there's a website for creating QR codes, and all we have to do is to make an HTTP get call. So at this stage, we're using our curl. Where's our curl call? Most likely using our curl call to access this API endpoint with our input. So our input is what we type in the terminal. So if I type hello, or let's even say maybe nasaramobile.com. So nasaramobile.com is our input. And the awesome thing is qrncode.de is actually pretty straightforward, and I can show you in the browser. Not Nasara Mobile. QR encode, yeah. So this is the website, and you can generate a QR code via the terminal. So, or like just using the print statement. So you could just do QR code.de / something like this, and then it generates the QR code for you. So the response is as a text, basically. So if you do Google, just everybody tries with Google, it generates this for you. So that's what we're trying to do. Very straightforward. Just access this via our Bash script, and we
So are
get.
you able to export it to an image? The
So
QR code. Are you able to?
not yet. So that's one of the things that I want to do, like to export it to an image. So like let's say if you type qr.sh and maybe nasaramobile.com, then you can define file name .png, including maybe even like a full path, something like that. I actually started doing it, but it wasn't working, so I just thought it wasn't necessary to show it yet. Yeah. So, but this that's what we're getting. We're basically just printing out uh, the, the text that we get from the API call. And over here, this is where we check our connection and check to see if we can ping Nasara Mobile. If not, no active internet connection available. And that's mainly because we do the API calls. And maybe we can handle certain exceptions, like if there's no internet, we can go on and do certain things. But yeah, right now. So we also have this thing that almost every bash script or .sh script has the same. But like if you maybe like if I enter something, so if I enter something like I don't know, that's what I meant to do. If I enter something like, what is one script that you can you give me? I'm blank right now, shooting blanks. Can you give me just a script to enter, like just a command without, so like, let's say,
You want to do what?
like PHP, like maybe PHP-V or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, or we have composer. So like let's say you just enter composer like this. Yeah, it would give you this information. Like, okay, these are the options, these are the available commands. So like this part is just what I was trying to explain. Like this is what you get
Oh,
basically.
okay, the usage. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I don't know what the technical name for that is, but you get all of this information, and this will grow. Like you have a version number, you have like a way to, um, yeah. So if I simply do this without providing any arguments, it will just show that, or you can also do dash h, and it will show this as well. So that's just this block of code called the usage, and exit one is basically just exit out. And I think in bash scripting they have exit, like it can, so you can return one up until, like for return statements you can return one up until 256, I think, and they all have like different meanings, or so I don't know what they are. But basically this is where the logic runs, like the first part of the logic basically for generating the code, and we check to see if we have like an argument after the command. So that's this. If there is no argument, then it means they haven't provided any information. So let's print out the usage of that. Um, and if there isn't any of the defined commands like H, then we would assume that uh, they want to create a QR code version of whatever information that they just put up. Else, if it is one and it's help, we show usage. Else, we will just go on and check if there's. Oh,
I don't worry, it's me.
okay. Exploded. Yeah, so we just check if there's internet connection, and then we take that input, and then we create our QR code. And same here. If there's so most of the time we run this because the text that we receive or the QR code that the response that we receive after we call the API is like a multi-line QR code basically, because it's, I don't know how to explain multi-line, but this is multi-line, right? Like this is it's like multiple lines, right? So we often use call this function instead, like just create a multi-line aspect of it. And yeah, so this is what I've been like just looking into,
Stuff,
and
you
then
know.
yeah, I think I even I heard that I don't know. I saw some really. I think what inspired this was I saw. Forgotten the name of the tool, but I think there's a bash command to to create a to do list, and you can you can uh, select that to do list, delete, edit, like do a bunch of things from the terminal, and that blew my mind because I didn't know you could interact with your terminal in that way, and so it just inspired me to read more. And I think you could also create your own to do list from the terminal. Like all you have to do is you could just write things to a file and then get it. And 'cause I think once you know how to process different commands and like get arguments, and it's very similar to like a Python programming or Go or PHP programming, right? Like once you know how to get information, and once you know how to read um, once you know how to read arguments and get like data coming in, and once you also know how to read like argument positions, I think you can uh, like create anything that you want to create by shell scripting. Uh, but I'm guessing this is not like a productivity tool because I don't think you're going to be creating QR codes from the terminal. But I think this gives a base for me, and I guess I'm just sharing like this journey because I think we all get into those moments where you get inspired by something and you want to keep learning. So it doesn't always have to be taking the big projects, but just starting with something small and then researching and then go on to build that application that you want to get, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing because I've had my own share of bash scripting in the past. I mean, a very long time ago, I was so fascinated about bash scripting,
Yeah.
and
One
I
of the
did a lot of
that
things with
we
it.
have at Nasara Mobile is just kind of automating like our own like our release process. Yeah, we have tools to do these things now, but like the moment you want to do a release, you just type just one command, and it does everything, updates all the repositories, packages, like does all the CD, like very simple and straightforward things. But it will probably take you 5 minutes to do it. But then you run a command and you do it in under a minute. So it's just the little things that counts. Like the little things really, really matter, and you get so much out of them. And one other thing was one of the bash script. I don't know if I can. I don't think I can show it to you because I have to go on Bitbucket and a bunch of other places. But like when when before we started using Vagrant, we had issues with um, like just setting up a new computer, like setting up your environment. So we decided to just write a bash script, but it only worked in the Linux environment. So like just a bash script, and then you type Nasara Mobile or Nasara Tech setup, and then it does everything for you. Like gets sets up your whole environment, does all your configurations, all the packages you need, and all the databases, populates everything, connects to our server, pulls some of the configurations that you may need, and it does all of those things for you. And I think that's it's like we forget about these things because that was probably like 3 years ago, and like now I'm back to shell scripting because it's it's like really really exciting and a good way to improve your workflow and uh, get simple things out fast.
Okay, so I think it's good. I think you can stop sharing your screen now, so that we can get back to the conversation. Yeah.
So that's funny because how do I stop? I don't see anything. Hmm. Maybe this.
When you hover your mouse at the top, do you see anything come up like
Mm,
drop down?
no, I don't.
So I think
Thought it was supposed to come up like somewhere around here, telling me that I'm sharing my screen.
yeah, at the top.
Hmm. This is a technological challenge.
Yeah, I mean, you can just navigate away from that tab, then we can talk.
Feel like I have no idea what I'm doing.
Nah, I mean, it's fine. It's fine.
It
This
just told
happens.
me so. Can you see my screen? Can you see the double mirrors and like
Yeah, I see it. I
it's
see it. Then, yeah, but it's fine. It's fine. We can still talk. So now, if you're talking about productivity on the terminal, have you? So what? This is the approach that I was using before I found all my Z's. But I would just the aliases, so things like aliases and
yeah.
preferences in like a dot file. So there's this idea of keeping around dot files, and even to the extent of keeping it in source control. So if let's say you move from one laptop to another laptop, it will just be a matter of cloning the repository and just sourcing it, and you have the preferences and everything on the new laptop.
Ah,
Whereas,
cool.
so if you don't do like that, it will mean that you have to copy the files over to the new laptop and source each of the files by yourself. Yeah, so there is something like a dot file. There's a popular dot file repository that most people, fork and just update it with their own preferences. Yeah, it'll be a good place to.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it'll be a good place to go and familiarize yourself with some other productivity hacks that people have. And I think that is they have some very good preferences for and very good defaults for iOS, like Mac OS, MacBooks really.
Yeah,
Yeah. There you go. So now we have it working. Cool.
I was getting.
Yeah.
Maybe let me turn on the lights in my room real quick.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
And if that helps, but no.
yeah. So I know it's a bit late at your end, so I'm just gonna ask one question that we have in the chat. Then I'll probably leave you to go and maybe hit town or relax. Or rest for the day. Or
You
start
know
your
me.
weekend.
You know me now. Yeah.
No, I mean things have to
Instead of
nah,
going
things- yeah, so you have to hit town. So how often do you see Pi?
Not so often. I think everyone is like very busy and fighting in their own stuff. So we don't see each other that much. But I think we're all seeing each other this Sunday.
So,
Yeah, I think Pi and
uh,
some other folks.
I hear Jojo too is there.
Yes, Jojo is my
I
main
need
man.
to talk. Yeah, I need to talk to Jojo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a great guy.
most of you are not. So I have a question here. Oliver is saying, I really like this hangout. A lot have been learned from it. But can Rashida give us some resources or books, especially on building the framework that she talked about? So do you have some book recommendations on building or developing your own work framework? What are some of the resources that have helped you to be comfortable with, rolling with a custom framework? Learn from it.
Mm.
But can Rashida give us some resources or books, especially on building the framework that she talked about?
Hello?
So do you have some book recommendations on building or developing your own work framework? What are some of the resources that have helped you to be comfortable with, rolling with a custom framework? Learn from it. But can Rashida give us some resources?
So the question keeps repeating.
Especially on building the framework that she talked about.
Hello?
So do you have some book recommendations on building or developing your own work framework?
We have
What are some of the resources that